Welcome into Hockey Mountain High, your go-to Avalanche podcast presented by Superbook Sports. J.J. Jerez, Aarif Deen here. We got to break down the Alex Newhook trade, right? Just got moved from the Colorado Avalanche. As a lot of you know, Alex Newhook came into the organization as a highly touted prospect. At one point was expected to play a big role in the team's future. However, the Avalanche made the decision to move him to Montreal in a package deal that's bringing a player and a couple draft picks, but meaningful draft picks at that, Aarif.
Yeah, the 31st and the 37th overall picks. I feel like when you're this close to the NHL draft, saying a first and a second, that doesn't matter anymore. It's 31 and 37. 31 is obviously the Florida Panthers pick. That's the one Montreal got in the Ben Sherratt trade. And 37 is their very own second rounder. So that's the one that's obviously the fifth best pick in the second round. So two very big pieces, because now the Avalanche suddenly go from maybe they need to trade their first rounder for a second line center to getting a second line center without trading their first rounder and adding 31 and 37 to their first rounder, which is obviously 27. So quite a bit of draft capital there at a decent spot for the Avalanche.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess let's start off before we get into the players the Avalanche or the player the Avalanche are receiving and the potential draft picks. I guess let's look at Alex Newhook and I guess just what it means for the Avalanche roster right now, right? As I kind of mentioned, he was supposed to be a big part of the future, and you and I both kind of had him slotted in for this season, despite him being an unrestricted or a restricted free agent. Excuse me. So obviously, the team felt it was time to move on from a guy like Alex Newhook.
Yeah, so I remember back, we're almost at 2 months since the Game 7 loss, and I remember those first couple weeks, I said it a lot. I said I don't think that Alex Newhook's going to come back, and I kept mentioning that the only person remaining in the bottom six is going to be Logan O'Connor, and then we'll see on Helm and Cogliano, because I felt Comfer wasn't going to be back. I felt obviously Lars Eller, Matt Nieto, and Alex Newhook. My opinion changed when the Gabe Landeskog news came out, because that hadn't been a thing yet. And I said, you know what, if they're not going to have Landeskog, that obviously opens up $7 more million, and maybe they're going to keep Newhook around for another year. But now the way that I see it is, number one, this team has bigger plans for how they want to build their bottom six. And number two, obviously, this is the big thing. You and I, we wrote our instant reactions as soon as the trade broke down. Alex Newhook didn't do anything wrong. The one thing he did do wrong was he didn't break out into an NHL star at the age of 21. And that's just so unfair to say it that way, because not everybody breaks out at that age. Not everybody should be a top six forward at that age. But that's the only thing he did wrong, if you want to call it wrong, for him to stay in Denver. The Avalanche could not go into another season with Newhook as the 2C. And obviously, they bring in Ryan Johansson. So then there was a question mark. Would they go into the new season with Newhook at the second line left winger? Of course not. That just sounds silly. So what good does Alex Newhook do in your bottom six? That's where he won the Stanley Cup, but is he going to be as productive as going out and getting somebody who can play a more grinder type role? I don't think so. And I think the team knew that too. So they were kind of at this crossroads in my mind where, we can continue to play this the way it is and let it play out. And then we end up with another Tyson Jost because, not because Newhook is as good or not as good as Tyson Jost was, but because we can't afford to play him in the top six. We are ready to win now. We just can't do that. So you're going to end up with this guy in the bottom six. He's never really going to develop because he's not really going to get that opportunity again, like he did last season and didn't grab a hold of it. And then you're going to end up like someone like Tyson Jost, where you trade him for a pending UFA third, fourth liner, and Nico Sturm. And I just think they looked at that. They looked at the fact that they need to rebuild this bottom six. They need to bring in players that they feel fit a certain type of guy that I don't think Newhook fits. The one place this went wrong for Newhook in Denver is the 2022/23 season. He had one chance to grab that second line center spot in one season and couldn't do it. And unfortunately, it's a tough business. The Avalanche had to make that decision to move on.
I like that comparison to Tyson Jost. There's a lot of parallels there, and they learned their lesson on that one, right? And didn't want to see that happen all over again and cut the cord early. Maybe not as early as some people might have liked. I don't know. Some people wanted him out of town at the trade deadline or maybe even last offseason, seeing that, there was a good chance he wasn't going to reach the full expectations we have for him so early. But it's tough to see the guys that were part of the Cup team leave, right? Not only that, Alex Newhook was a well-liked guy. I liked him. He's good to talk to, and he was, I would just chat with him off the record a lot, about his equipment or just about the game in general, and he was always pleasant. And because of that, I always felt like, I liked him and because he's a well-liked guy, it had me holding on to hope for him. It had me believing that, oh man, one day he is going to make this step. He has some scoring ability in there. But like you said, the Avs kind of felt like it was now or never to really get the value out of him. And who knows where the ceiling's actually going to be for him. They need somebody who's going to be able to produce now. So yeah, tough to see a guy like that go. But of course, as we've said before on this podcast, you got to break some eggs to make an omelet, and Avs are just cracking a few eggs right now.
Yeah, and look, this is not an attack on Tyson Jost, going back to that parallel. I think Newhook is going to be a good player. I genuinely think he's going to be a 50, 60, maybe 70, 80 point guy. I think he's going to have that opportunity in Montreal to make mistakes and stay in the top six, play on the top line at times. Like, he's going to have some fun things that he can do in Montreal that, is a team in a different part of where their rebuild is compared to an Avalanche team contending for the Cup. So that's number one. Number two, in terms of guys that won the Stanley Cup walking away, look, you and I are recording this podcast. It's June 27th. It's 9:00 p.m. The Avs won the Cup 366 days ago. And let me see if I can go over this off the top of my head. From the second line, Landeskog is missing, obviously part of the team, kind of. Kadri's missing. From the third line, Burakovsky and Abe Kubel both shared that spot, along with Newhook and Comfer, who we expect to move on. And then on the third line, Helm and Cogliano, 2 question marks. Helm, a bigger question mark than Cogliano, and Logan O'Connor, who's still around. So you have your entire top line. On the second line, you have Nichushkin, and on the fourth line, you have Logan O'Connor. That's it. Like, that's all from the forwards, obviously, not the defense. In the defense, it's Eric Johnson, and we'll see there. But the big thing that I take away from this, and I honestly, we've done so many podcasts recently, and I've done so many radio hits. I don't remember where I've said what, so I'm going to say it anyway. I may have said it when we did the episode with with Jesse. Is you can't fall in love with the guys you win the Cup with. We saw the LA Kings make that mistake, and it cost Dean Lombardi his job. He, eventually had to finagle himself out of the Mike Richards contract with whatever the hell was going on there at a border in Canada and US, and signed a lot of guys to long-term deals. And you can't, in a salary cap world, fall in love and have that emotional connection with players where you just feel like everybody needs a long-term deal. Like, they gave Marian Gaborik like a 7-year deal at like 31 years old, whatever the hell it was. So I think Joe Sakic and Chris McFarland, it's a tough business, and they understand that. And this Alex Newhook trade, not to go off topic and not to like let it go off the rails, but this makes me feel more and more like Pavel Francouz. I've been saying it for a few weeks now. The Avalanche missed him the entire 2021 season. In 2022, he was the backup and stepped up. In 2023, once again, missed a ton of games. It's a tough business, and they might look at him and say, hey, thank you for sweeping the Edmonton Oilers. We need someone that we can rely on. Georgie can't play 60 games again. And I love the fact that this front office, Joe Sakic and Chris McFarland and the rest of the guys around there, are not falling in love with their guys enough where they just have to keep everybody. They know it's a tough business. They know there are tough decisions to be made. They saw the Avalanche kind of get skated up and down the ice by the depth of the Seattle Kraken. They saw them lacking size while they went out and got Ryan Johansson, 6'3", 218 pounds. Their third line, Dennis Malgin's an RFA. If he even gets qualified, that's a smaller forward too. Are they going to want to go with him, or are they going to want to go somewhere else? It just seems like they've, and obviously Malgin wasn't on the Cup winning team, but they didn't fall in love with that Cup winning team. Decisions needed to be made. It started with the Nazem Kadri decision, because if you remember last year, there were rumors maybe the Avalanche trade JT Compher or Sam Girard and give Kadri what he wanted. And, that's a conversation and an argument for a different day if the Avalanche should have given Kadri 7x7. But they knew from the onset they had to make those tough decisions. It started with Nazem Kadri. Darcy Kemper was another big one, and it's continued here with this Newhook trade.
It's got to be bittersweet for Alex Newhook, right? On one hand, you're going to Montreal where you're going to get more opportunity, more playing time, and maybe be a part of a growing and developing team. On the other hand, you're walking away from a potential Stanley Cup contender, and obviously was a lot closer to winning a cup here in Colorado than he will be in Montreal. So,
Yeah.
it's hopefully for him, he's taking it well and just saying, "Hey, look, I got opportunity. What's in the past was great, and I'll always cherish it, but time to grow."
Yeah, so you remember last year where I made that comparison to Tyler Seguin, who had
Yep.
like a slower rookie
This
year, won
last
the
off
Stanley
season,
Cup.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, last off season. Well, I'm going to do it again for a different reason. Tyler Seguin, I'm sure, was bittersweet to leave the Boston Bruins. Different kind of exit. There was a lot of weird murmurs about him like being late to a practice. Like Newhook didn't have any of that. Obviously, Tyler Seguin had one decent season before he was traded, 67 points in 81 games. But the reality is, Seguin went to the Dallas Stars and became the guy. I don't think Newhook is going to be the guy in Montreal. Nick Suzuki's there. Kirby Dach is there. But you got drafted by this team as a high pick. You won a Stanley Cup. You learned from some pretty cool guys to play with, the same way that Tyler Seguin got to play with Bergeron and Marchand and Zdeno Chara and Tim Thomas. Learned from all these guys. And now it's time to go to my new team and kind of spread my wings and develop into the guy that I could be, that, eventually became the Tyler Seguin we know and love in Dallas. So again, not the same type of career, but in the sense of bittersweetness, I think that that's someone you can relate him to. Even someone like Andre Burakovsky with the Capitals. I know he was there a little bit longer, but someone that won the cup there as a depth role player and then was traded to the Avalanche to kind of spread his wings and fly and become a top six winger, to then go to Seattle. And now he's like their top line option. So, it is bittersweet. And it's tough to leave, especially when you build a bond that this team had built. Newhook and Bo and Byram were friends before they got here. Bo, I would assume, is going to get a new deal and stick around. But I think this is good for Newhook. I honestly do. I think he's going to do really well.
How are you going to remember Alex Newhook when you look back and his career's over, your career's over, and we think about his time with the Avalanche? What were the strengths you would say he brought to this team?
He was mature beyond his years. And he is. Like, he's mature well beyond his years. And maybe it's that locker room that we're talking about, that Avalanche dressing room, the core, the leaders on that team. But mature beyond his years, a hell of a great teammate, leadership material. How often do we talk about the Avalanche love to draft and acquire captains? That's a guy that co-captained Team Canada at the time when he was in the World Juniors with Bo and Byram. That's what I see him as. Speedy winger that showed flashes of brilliance that never quite reached that full potential. But I'm also always going to have this feeling of what if. And the what if isn't, if they held on to Newhook. And again, like, I can't stress this enough. I genuinely think Newhook will become a great player someday. And I don't think it's fair to look back in 3 years and be like, Newhook's putting up 60 points in Montreal. Colorado should have kept him. Like, right now, in this moment, we understand why the trade was made, and we shouldn't forget about that. The what if for me is last year. Had the Avalanche had a proper offseason where everybody was healthy and Newhook got to be the second line center playing between a healthy Valeri Nichushkin and a healthy and available Gabriel Landeskog, where would his career be? Because he didn't get that opportunity. He got Val for 7 games and Martin Kaut on the other side, sometimes Evan Rodriguez, then JT Compher came in and he was center, then he was wing, then there was like a Sampo Ranta. Like, it was just a whole bunch of shit that just, like, he didn't get a chance, man. And then by the time the Avalanche started to get a little bit of consistency in their lineup, it was time to make that chase. And JT Compher's our second line center. We know we can trust him there. Sorry, Alex, we don't have time to give you another opportunity. We just lost to the Chicago Blackhawks in January, and we are out of the playoffs. So that's my big what if. If the Avalanche entered the 22-23 season healthy, and Newhook got to be the center between a healthy Val and an available and healthy Landeskog, where would he be?
It's an interesting thought for sure, because, even towards the end of the season, he, wasn't really able to make the impact that we all wanted from him, and never really was able to work his way up the lineup, but it's hard to do that with limited opportunity. And if he could have not found himself in that position in the first place and maybe shined with the, the hypothetical names that you mentioned, it could have been a completely different story, but it is what it is. And Avalanche are moving on from Alex Newhook.
Yeah.
See you later.
And yeah, I mean, look, it's hard to kind of break down trades where there isn't a body coming back. It's been a while, man. It's been a while since the Avalanche are the one giving up a player for draft picks. But can you judge this trade? We just did as much judging as we can, but the true value of this trade will be felt over the next few weeks or a couple months or however long it takes to rebuild this roster and get all the pieces in order, where it's going to start to make sense. Because it can go one of two ways. This could directly lead to the number 31 and 37, or one of the 31 or 37 picks ending up being used as trade pieces to bring somebody in, like literally Wednesday. By the time you guys are listening to this, first round of the NHL draft, maybe the Avs trade one of those guys for a forward and it makes sense. Or maybe they use those draft picks, replenish their prospect pool, 31 and 37, as well as the 27th pick that Colorado already has. Like, those are very close to where they drafted Justin Barron and Drew Hellison. And those were guys that they used to get Lehkonen and Manson. So, maybe they just replenish that, and then free agency starts and they go out and sign different kinds of guys. I don't know. Let's Jonathan Toews, maybe Michael Bunting. Maybe they bring in another guy, and like they kind of rebuild the third line where you're like, okay, now I get why Newhook didn't fit into this plan. So there's a couple different ways to look at it. Also, something to keep an eye on is, what is Newhook going to get from Montreal? Because if Newhook signs, like, as simple as this, and he deserves this, given the amount of points he had. Like, remember when Andre Burakovsky came to the Avs? 3 straight seasons of 12 goals. And I believe only one of those seasons he had over 30 points. The Avalanche gave him a 2-year deal, I want to say at $3.25 million. So let's just, right off the bat, Montreal signs Alex Newhook to a 2-year bridge deal worth $6 million. So $3 million AAV. Right away, you see that, you're like, okay, that makes sense. You cannot have Newhook making $3 million on the third line. You don't have the cap for that. If Newhook signs for 2 years, 1.5 per year, then you're kind of like, maybe we should have saved room for him. So depending on what Newhook gets, depending on what Byram signs for, maybe now that they don't have to give Newhook money, they go out and sign somebody for league minimum or somebody close to it to play in that spot, and then go around, and instead of giving Bo and Byram a bridge deal, they take advantage of the Landeskog LTIR and be like, fuck it, let's just lock up Bo from now. Let's just give him whatever, 6, 7, however many $1 million, and try to get him locked up for 5, 6, 7, or 8 years. So the true judgments of this deal aren't going to make sense until we see where it goes from here. But there is just, as you just heard me blab, like just a variety of options at Chris McFarland's disposal right now.
Well, and everybody's getting a pay upgrade too. So good on everybody, right?
Yeah.
That's what you want to see, I guess, and guys that you like and guys that you root for. Yeah, I mean, you kind of talked a little bit about the draft picks coming back, and it's kind of interesting that they have all 3 of those picks within 11 picks of each other.
Yeah.
So they probably have a solid list of 20 guys, and good chance they're going to land 3 of them. So yeah, but who knows? Like you said, they might move it too. So a lot can still play out, and of course, it's always going to be too early to tell on draft picks anyway. But we'll break down the draft picks later on this week. I guess. Any thoughts on Gianni Fairbrother? Is there any? Is there anything that is NHL caliber in that name?
I've not done any research on him, and I keep forgetting to mention him in the trade. That's how little bit I know about him, so I'm not going to pretend, but I'll just make the same joke I made over text message. Gianni makes this a fair trade, brother. So we'll see. I'll look into him. I'll see what he's got, because hey, just by adding him, that means the Avalanche might see something in him, or it means Montreal might be at the 50 contract limit. Like there's a whole bunch of reasons why he could have been added. But we'll see. I do think something to keep an eye on with this Newhook trade, to go back to what I was saying about maybe they're going to give a league minimum player more of an opportunity now that they have that roster space for him, is Frederick Olofsson that they got from the Dallas Stars a couple weeks ago. So maybe that guy making $775K is now going to get a 4th line winger spot and the opportunity to be a 3rd liner, if he develops and shows that he can give you 10, 15 goals or whatever, because Alex Newhook isn't there. Olofsson, I want to say, is a little bit older. So like, this isn't by any means a prospect. So, that's just one example of where this could go. But in terms of Gianni Fairbrother, I got 0 on him on June 27th.
It's been fun to kind of see how the dominoes fall, right? Kind of Pierre-Luc Dubois being that main first domino to fall, and then he goes to LA. That's when suddenly Montreal's shopping and signing other players. So I guess now that we're here, what other ripple effects do you think can come out of this trade, mostly from an Avalanche perspective here?
So real quick, Gianni Fairbrother, defenseman, 6 foot, 200 pounds. He played 25 AHL games last season. He had 1 goal, 6 assists. So that's about the extent of what I know. He was drafted in 2019, so the same draft as Alex Newhook and Bowen Byram. But he was taken in the 3rd round, 77th overall. So that's all we got on him. Going back to your question, the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade is interesting because it wasn't entirely official yet when the Newhook trade broke. But it was in the process of like bits and pieces of the deal were kind of starting to come out. And the reality is the Montreal Canadiens, obviously, they were linked to PLD for a very long time. As soon as they made that Newhook trade, you knew that meant they were out of the PLD race and they knew they were out of it. But good for the Winnipeg Jets to get what they got back from the Kings. But when I look at that deal, I look at, I tweeted this a little bit earlier, but the LA Kings, they still need to clear cap space. They need to fill, I want to say 5 or 6 roster players, as in forwards or defensemen, and a starting goalie. The only goalie they have under contract is Phoenix Copley. Obviously, Jonas Corposalo is a UFA. They have $4.5 million to fill all those spots. So even if they bring in some rookies making entry-level deals, it's still going to eat up the $4.5 million. And that doesn't even include the fact that a starting goalie is going to cost you a couple dollars. So you look at the LA Kings and you see a team that needs to clear more cap space. And this is something I tweeted earlier today. It's something I was talking to you about over the weekend. There is a winger on the LA Kings that I don't know if they want to give him up. They've obviously already given up Iafallo, but they have Anze Kopitar, PLD, Kevin Fiala, Philip Deno, Adrian Kempe, Trevor Moore. These are guys that are all locked up, except for Kopitar, but he's a lifer. These are guys that are all locked up for multi-year deals that are going to be around for a while. They have Lizotte, Grunstrom, Byfield, and Kaliev, both 1 year away from contract expiration, RFA. And then they have one forward outside of Kopitar. Again, he's a UFA next summer, but that's a lifer guy. They have one other forward who's a UFA next summer. He's making $4.25 million. It's a winger that can play on both sides. It's Victor Arvidsson. And it makes the world of sense that if the LA Kings, who've already shed a lot of money off of their decor, and contracts and players, who've already shed a goaltender in Cal Peterson that just wasn't going to fit with this roster, and have already shed, they had to give away some good players in the trade to Winnipeg, one of them being Alex Iafallo, who makes $4 million. If they want to clear cap space, if they can't find a finder for Trevor Moore, who's got 4 more years left at 4.2, trading Victor Arvidsson and his $4.25 million might be the way to go. And the reason why that name sticks out to me is because in Nashville, Arvidsson, Johansson, and Philip Forsberg were a dynamite line. They were fantastic together. Johansson was the playmaker. Forsberg and Arvidsson were the goal scorers. I really think of how cool it would be to have Arvidsson and Johansson playing with Val Nichushkin instead of Philip Forsberg, how much that would mean for both those guys and how much it could help rejuvenate Ryan Johansson's career.
And Victor Arvidsson hasn't really been the same Arvidsson since he left Nashville, whether it's injuries or just finding his fit with the LA Kings. So, there could be a chance that they just didn't see a good fit there for him and are willing to move him. And it'd be nice because Victor Arvidsson, if you've listened to this podcast for a while, I think very highly of him because mainly of what I've seen him do against the Avalanche. He's just one of those guys that's a known Avs killer and feels like every time they're up against Victor Arvidsson, he's scoring at least 1 goal. And getting some assists on the Avs. So I would love to see that. That'd be great. And it'd be great to see him reunited with Ryan Johansson. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that 3-year stretch that we talked about on the episode with Jesse, 2017, 2018, 19, and 2019, those 3 years where the Nashville Predators were just a great team. Arvidsson had 31 goals in 80 games, then 29 in 78, and then 2018-19, 34 goals in 58 games. That's a 50-goal pace. He did dip in 2020. He only had 15 goals in 57 games. And in 2021, 10 in 50 games. Those are both with Nashville. Since he's gotten to LA, he hasn't been the Arvidsson of 2017, 18, 19, but he has rebounded well. He had 20 goals and 49 points in 66 games last year, 2022. And this last season that just ended, 26 goals, 59 points in 77 games. Putting him back with Ryan Johansson, I think will get him back up over 30 for the first time since 2019. And again, it would help Ryan Johansson and rejuvenate his career too. Victor Arvidsson is he's such a great player, man. He's a great scorer. What I love about him is he also gives you the same element that you get from Mikko Rantanen, Val Nichushkin, Arturi Lehkonen, and hell, even Gabe Landeskog. He can play both wings. Landeskog doesn't play the off wing a lot, but he does do it. Mikko Rantanen does it all the time. Arturi Lehkonen's doing it right now if he's the left winger on the top line. And when Arturi goes to the left wing on the top line, Val usually goes to the right wing on the second line. So he plays his off wing. Victor can do that too. So it just gives you a lot more flexibility to move these guys around when you have that ability to do that.
Yeah, could be fun. And, the Avs are far from done this off season. I guess, it is late in the podcast, but it's a short one. We still got to get it in. Of course, that's Superbook Sports, guys. We're changing the game. Help your bets stay hot this summer at Superbook Sports, the most trusted name in sports gambling with a direct line to Vegas. And now, when you use the promo code Mile High, you score up to $250 with their first bet bonus, win or lose. Superbook will match your first bet up to $250 with promo code Mile High. Download the Superbook Sports app, enter promo code Mile High, and you'll get $250 courtesy of Superbook Sports. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. Aarif, did you get the chance to see the schedule that was released for the upcoming season in the Colorado Avalanche?
I did, yeah. I have a couple thoughts on that. I just want to throw one more thing out on Victor Arvidsson that I just thought of. This is a guy that's around the same age as Gabe Landeskog, is also Swedish, has played with him on the national team before. Man, if you bring in someone like Arvidsson, even if in 12 months from now you have a healthy Gabe Landeskog, he's going to look at C-Mac and those guys and just say, hey, we got to keep him around. I want to play with this guy too. And then you have all sorts of options. But again, pipe dream, we'll see what happens there. It's just something interesting to keep an eye on. Schedule, yes. I have taken a look at the schedule. There are a couple things that stick out to me about that.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to take it from here. Okay, so two things that stick out to me about it. Number one, did you see how many back-to-backs there are?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's only 8 of them. It is tied for the least amount that the Avalanche have ever had in a season. But there's and that's something I just did. I did a quick TV hit for Channel 2 News that's going to air Tuesday night, and that was something that they brought up, is how great it is that they're only going to have 8 back-to-backs. But I think even more crucial than that, did you happen to take a look at what the end of the season looks like?
I haven't. I mean, I looked at it, but that wasn't something that drew my focus.
Okay, so it drew my focus because the Avs already had a busy April last year before the rescheduled Nashville game. And then with that, I want to say they played a stretch of like 13 games in 23 days or something. Well, this time around, the Avs end the season 4 of 5 games at home, which already is great because you're only traveling once. April 7, home. April 9, home. April 13, home. So you got 3 days off. April 14, road game, back-to-back. April 18, home. So the one road game you're playing in those last 5 games is in Vegas at 1:30 p.m. after playing Winnipeg at 2:00 p.m., coming off of 3 days off. And then after that Vegas game, which is, again, Sunday 1:30 p.m. start. So you're going to be back home and in your own bed if you're an Avalanche player by 6 or 7 p.m. Sunday night. Then you have Monday off, Tuesday off, and Wednesday off. You play the Edmonton Oilers Thursday night, and then you're probably going to have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday off before the playoffs start. That end of season schedule, 5 games from April 7 to April 18, with 3 days off between games 81 and 82, is going to be massive for this team, especially if they have their spot already locked up by then. Like when they finish that road trip that ends at Edmonton April 5th, if they have their playoff spot locked up and they know who they're going to play, dude, those last 5 games over 2 weeks, you can mail it in, rest guys, and go into the playoffs with one of my favorite phrases from the 2022 playoffs: rest is a weapon.
It's not at a cost, or it comes at a cost, though, right? You look at the beginning of the schedule and 2 home games in the entire month of October. I think that's
Yeah.
kind of interesting. 2 out of 8 games that they'll be playing in that month. And then, of course, I like how in December there's a good chunk of home games there for some home cooking during the holidays. That'll be nice for the Avs, I think, to be home around that time. Darkest time of the year. It's good to just be resting in bed. But of course, then they hit the road again after the All-Star break. So they'll have their last home game on January 6th. Then it hits the All-Star break, and then they won't have another home game until February 18th. So a
Wow.
full 3 weeks there that they'll essentially not be playing at Ball Arena. So,
Yeah. It comes
some good road trips, I think.
Yeah,
That
and
ahead of them.
those are always fun. But like last season, they only played 3 games at home in October. The difference is they had the opener at home, and then they did a lot of road games. The big one for me, especially after these last 3 seasons, October and November have always been, well, not always, but these last 2 years have been so wonky because of those back-to-backs with Columbus. 2021, November 2021, they thought they were going to go to Finland. They didn't. They still had those weird back-to-backs with breaks in, before and after. 2022 November, they finally did go to Finland. And, we've heard how much they complained about that coming back and how tough it was for the team to readjust. So just not having that and having a solid flow of games in October and in November is already in itself going to be good for this team. And
Yeah,
then obviously after the All-Star break and all that as well.
I don't know if the NHL is trying to do it, but it seems like the road trips here kind of make more sense. Maybe trying to take off some of the hefty mileage that comes with playing in the West and playing with Colorado, especially. So, I feel like it makes a lot of sense.
I love the start of the season too. Again, I know that this means the middle is going to be crammed, but how often do we hear players say in the middle of the season, you want to get into a routine? Isn't that not what they always say? You want to get into a routine. You want to play every other night. You want to get on a hot streak and go, 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 and then get your rest. But in the beginning of the season, it's the same thing. 3-game road trip with 2 days off in between every game to start. At Los Angeles on the 11th, at San Jose on the 14th, at Seattle on the 17th. The beauty of the 11th and 14th, dude, we just talked about the roster. There's going to be a lot of new fucking faces in that locker room. October 11, you play a home game at LA, and then you got 2 days to hang out on the beach, chit chat with one another, get to know your teammate next to you. And then you got another game on October 14, and then you got another 2 days off. So it's going to be a great, what do they call it? Team bonding. It's a week-long road trip, and then come home, beat the shit out of the Chicago Blackhawks like you always do for your home opener. And then you got the Carolina Hurricanes, and then it's right back on the road for 3 more. Like it's a pretty good start in my opinion. And it's got that flow that we've missed the last 2 years because of the Columbus series.
My last thought, I'm sure nobody cares, especially this is all so far away, but I look at the Florida road trip that they usually take, right? Typically they'll play Florida and then Tampa or vice versa in back-to-back games. Instead this year they'll go all in one road trip. Rangers, New Jersey, Carolina, Florida, back up to Washington, and then Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that's a weird one. I'm sure there's some building availability there that doesn't make them too happy. But
maybe a T-Swift concert or something.
Yeah, between the Florida and Washington game is 2 full days off, and then 1 day off between Washington, Tampa, and then you come back from Tampa, 2 days off before you play that Sunday game against Arizona. So just a lot of breaks, not a lot of game, travel, game, day off, game, travel, game. Like it's not that same every other day cadence. You do see that in December. I remember December last year was actually pretty much the exact same setup. Last year in December, they played every single odd number game or odd number day except for the 25th. So they played December 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 all the way to 23, and then 27, 29, and 31. This year, it's not as much. They play 15 games instead of 16, but very similar. 2, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 16, 17, 19, 21, 23, Christmas. Same exact thing as last year, 27, 29, 31. So that's your busy month this year. You have one of them instead of like 3.
Alex Newhook doesn't make his return until March 26th. So farewell, Alex Newhook. We'll see you in quite a long time.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty close to the end of the year. And we'll see who else, because if JT Compher, for example, not to date this podcast because it's going to change real quick over the next few days, but if he, for example, signs in Chicago, the Avalanche will see him for the home opener. No banner to raise this time like Jack Johnson got, but just an example. Like, I'm really curious to see Eric Johnson. Where is he going to go? Evan Rodriguez, that's a player that we can talk about another time. I think they bring him back. If not, where does he go? There's a lot of, moving parts still.
I'm pretty sure Alex Newhook told me he changes his skate laces every period.
Yeah, he did. I remember that.
So I wonder if Kroenke had something to do with that and said, "Man, we are spending a fortune on this guy's skate laces. Get him out of town.
JJ,
get him out of here. These skate laces are costing me too much money."
Where is he going to
and
play?
Recycle the beer cups.
Where is he going to play? Montreal? I give it till October 20th before we have a 1,500 word article about him and his skates because of the amount of media in Montreal. It's going to be fun. I'm excited to see him kind of play. And he does come off as a player with that kind of personality that wants to play in a big market. He wants to, he loves the spotlight is, I guess what I'm trying to say here. And he's sure as hell going to get that in Montreal.
Yeah, as long as he's playing well, right? I think he rides the confidence roller coaster heavily.
He does, yeah.
Right on. Well, that'll do it for today. We'll be back to break down some of the draft and what shakes out and goes down there.
Yeah. Also, one more thing. This is not a knock on Jared Bednar, but Alex Newhook playing for Marty St. Louis is going to do really good for him.
Yeah. Man, they're getting small over there in Montreal. I want to see Newhook with Caulfield.
I heard Nick Kyprios today on his radio show. Love Nick Kyprios. If you guys don't listen to his radio show, you should. He said Alex Newhook went to Montreal. Oh, it makes sense. They have a 5'10" limit. Nobody's taller than 5'10" on that team. And Suzuki, Caulfield. Now you got Newhook there. But yeah, him and the coach is 4'1". So him playing, like I said, for Marty St. Louis is going to be fun.
Well, all right. Thanks for hanging out with us today, midweek. Hope you enjoy the middle of the week. Hope you're enjoying the nice weather here in Colorado. If you're not here in Colorado, hope you're enjoying your weather wherever you are. So if you made it this far in the podcast, bless your pretty little heart. Let's make hockey for everyone. We got you.